All right, good morning. Thank you, Jasmine. Thank you, Contentstack, for having us. We're actually really humbled to be a part of this amazing speaker set and excited to share our journey with you. My name is Katie Johnson. I'm a senior product manager for ASICS Digital, which is the digital hub of ASICS Corporation.
I'm Corinne Balsam. I'm Senior E-commerce Operations Manager at ASICS Digital.
And what we'll be going through today reviews our business case and our commitment to composable, how we're organized as a team, how we organize the work, what we've accomplished and how, along with lessons learned and some wins. This is the formal why as to why 2023 was our year to kick off the focus on composable capabilities. There are a handful of business needs that a headless CMS and composable architecture can address. We're modernizing ASICS tech stack. We're acting with greater operational efficiencies and finding ways to reduce costs. And again, which is a very similar and different story than most of you here in the room. A headless CMS was an engineering requirement for us to move into our new architecture, knowing that composable allows for greater tooling flexibility, but also greater tooling confidence. It's not unlike the construction of a sneaker. Every element of that shoe is there on purpose and to do a job. And if it's not doing its job, we can't just wait it out. We address what's going on the outsole or switch out something on the upper. We've already gained operational efficiencies in supporting our global e-commerce sites, and we're putting a foundation in place to align across more digital touch points. We're streamlining systems where we can, and we've actually already identified a secondary CMS and deprecated that system, knowing that it wouldn't scale with us. We're looking forward to improving operational costs, particularly between design and development, and improving time to market. And while we have visions of modern engineering practices and improving ecosystem storytelling, we have 4 key global regions that we support and who are truly our internal customers, and we need their buy-in. And the idea of composable is a total mindset shift for organizations like ours who have been operating with a monolithic platform. We need to make sure that our content solution is working for the hard work that they do. Our global e-commerce sites are a critical front door to our D2C experience. And while we work with editors to operationalize Contentstack, we're delivering a simpler UI, more customizations, near real-time publishing. We're also educating on the benefits of composable really as an approach and as a philosophy. It's just the beginning of opening ASICS up to more flexibility and extensibility. Up until last year, content creation was rigid and overly complex. Typically, editors were waiting overnight for their content to go live. And regional customizations that were happening across 2 separate realms made the concept of global content and the approach to global content very cumbersome. As ASICS Digital, we have a multitude of teams in play supporting the digital brand experience. Contentstack and what we call our CMS pod sits within our platform and enablement product portfolio. And over time, we imagine that CMS starts to move really into the middle as we extend capabilities to publish consistent, compelling content everywhere. And at a higher level, our team is actually really sort of a pilot program that our technical approach is informing the technical approach that more of our teams will take to continue to move forward with their own composable pieces of the puzzle. As far as how we work as a team, starting on the left, product is responsible for the what and the why, making sure that it's in line with business priorities and values, but also our overall strategy in driving ASICS digital growth. Design is driving brand identity and user experience, and engineering is really owning our how of our execution. At the beginning of 2023, we actually engaged with 2 SI partners simultaneously, which at the time and still now sounds really crazy. But the partnership that we found in Grid Dynamics and in Capgemini and their respective expertise in Contentstack and in Next.js and Composable is really what we needed to get started, especially as we were investing in and building up the skill sets within our own developer bench. We have a partner and on-team QA growing our automation suite, and a technical project manager who's orchestrating our multi-layer delivery. And Corinne and the e-commerce team or the e-commerce operations team is a very critical part of our entire process. Not only does Corinne help to deliver our end user training and our documentation, but e-commerce ops is also our first line of defense as issues are raised. So their whole team has a wide and deep knowledge of all of our systems in play and a really intimate understanding of the business experience. Corinne and I have found critical partnership in one another and with our technical project manager. And it's been really interesting over time how we've flexed across roles and responsibilities in order to get our process down and in order to keep our initiative moving forward. And now, knowing about the people, this is typically how we think about our work. So if a feature or capability request comes in, we are going through validation and requirements gathering. We're reviewing with design and starting to drill down the scope and sizing with engineering. We want to make sure that what we're building is durable, feasible, viable, and desirable. Then we start to split things out. We look at our content stack, content modeling, and how business users are expecting to interact with what we're building. We have to think through how the front end and our customer-facing presentation will work through Next.js. And we also still have to identify SFCC dependencies, especially while we're in sort of a transition phase. So that, for any capability, we're talking about 3 work streams. So then we're talking about multiple layers of QA, a crisp and clean business training, and release management, and up to 3 independent systems in order to ship.
We really took our time when we were starting our whole discovery and planning process. So the work that I'm going to talk about on this slide, this was actually 6 months of preparation to shipping that MVP. Our stack architecture, our MVP, the minimum viable product, and our localization strategy. That was kind of where we spent most of that time. Our stack needed to support and work in tandem with our SFCC architecture, which is a pretty complex architecture in 2 realms. It also needed to support our future, more unified vision. Our MVP needed to go through that whole process Katie just talked about and really double down on the training and enablement so that we could educate our key business partners. We call them the business or the region. They're our content editors, and we needed to excite them and bring them along with this journey. Our localization strategy for our EU region is pretty complex. There are 32 language locale combinations, and our new architecture needed to do everything that did and hopefully even be a little bit better. Spoiler alert, it is actually better. So our strategy for our MVP and overall was to migrate by page type. And this example here on the left is the product listing page, or PLP. The content that we deliver, the content type, is called the PLP banner. We chose this page type because of its low risk, because most of what's going on this page is buying, the shoes on the page, but also high visibility. But we had a sticking point. Well, first of all, we were working for the first time with all 4 regions at once, which is very, very new to us. And the sticking point was this. We went back and forth on this one for a long time. Were we cutting over, or were we doing this other thing, enabling it? We didn't even have a name for it yet. Fortunately, we weren't cutting over. We were able to be really flexible with it. So the regions got to choose page by page if they wanted to bring this type over or keep it in SFCC. I mean, who gets to migrate with this amount of flexibility? It's like have your cake and eat it too, right? Our guiding principle, though, was at the top of the page, the content coming from Contentstack, rendered by Next.js, would always be first. and the SFCC content would be beneath that. So after that 6-month investment, we really started moving very, very quickly. We delivered 7 page types and 40 content types within this first year. The product landing page, like I mentioned, was the first one, only it's product listing, product landing, yada, yada. The regions were moving manually their banners over kind of as they choose. So our Australia team, they move them all over at once because that's how they like to work. The US team, as they needed to make an edit or as they had a new need, they would move that over. Meanwhile, we were working furiously planning out this blog migration that we had to get off of our secondary CMS. It just was like a fake headless system that we bought like years ago that was no bueno. We had 100 articles, but was really more like 1,000 when you consider all those translations. And it was a tremendous amount of programmatic migration need. It was, in a way, more than, it wasn't really worth doing at this time, though. Like, it wasn't worth spending all that time because we were still building that castle that Mark was talking about. So we punted on that, and we came up with what I think a very clever solution using Algolia content search to index in a landing page new blog articles that were coming out of Contentstack with the old blog articles that we had a snapshot of in SFCC. Next up was our content landing and homepage. That's the real meat of the project. We were working on these content types and we prioritized the ones that were needed for the initial marketing pages that the regions needed. And also with the homepage, because they were able to be in both systems, as we released the content types, they could start to fill in their homepage from top to bottom. Now they're using all the regions are using the full homepage in Contentstack, which is like so exciting for us. Next up, as Mark also mentioned, customer service. I mean, you can't forget customer service. And when we went live in Salesforce many, many years ago, we never touched that section again. And it was a pretty bad customer service experience using our customer service section. In this migration, we got to do some nice little tweaks. And there was even some natural synergies that occurred. For example, Contentstack makes it really easy to publish a page for just one country. Like you might have like a UK content. In SFCC, you couldn't do that. You can't have a page that only exists in a country. You can have a page with no content on it, but the page still exists, which is bad for SEO. So lots of nice synergies coming from this new system. Next up is the real blog migration, big kahuna, where we did have to do this manual programmatic migration. We're in deep with that right now. We're talking to the SEO agency all the time. We're working on redirects that we have SFCC pages going to non-SFCC pages. So like, how does that work? We're figuring it out, but it's a lot of problem solving. And last up, the category page. So the category page is kind of like another product listing page, but instead of the product grid, it's all content. We thought this would just be like a lift and shift, but our regional editors had been clamoring for this dream template that they called the hybrid PLP. They wanted it, and they were like, please, please, can you enable this for us? And we saw like, wow, we can actually do this really easily. We were able to kind of like scope creep ourselves and deliver this like awesome thing. I bring you hybrid PLP. On the upper right quadrant here, you see this little like drop down, and that's in the system itself. You can, just with the click of a button, get these 3 versions of this page. So we can have content at the top, product at the bottom, content in the middle where you can see the refinements are kind of on the left side there, or the full content takeover. I just would like to add that in trying to do this in SFCC, they never got it, and they worked on it for like over a year. Oh, one more thing. How do I go back? Okay. The speed to market and flexibility with this page configuration really astounded all of us, our customers and ourselves. And when we demoed it for our Japan team, which is notoriously methodical and slower to adopt new functionality, they were so excited about this that they trained themselves because it was so easy to understand. And they're now fully on the bandwagon and have adopted Contentstack like 6 months earlier than they had planned. We also had this aha moment where suddenly all the content types were available on all the pages all at once. This led us to rethink our strategy entirely. And you can see here on the bottom where we have some names that don't even make sense anymore. The PLP banner was designed to work only on the product listing page, which we didn't even need anymore. We had to do an intra-Contentstack migration to deprecate the product listing page, which was now available as one of those examples you saw on the content landing page. So this was just a big win. We were super excited. And we're going to start naming our content types, more
generically.
Atomically. Okay, so I mentioned before we didn't even have a name for this like non-cutover, provisioning. So we woke up one day and we're like, oh, it's a rollout. We're rolling something out, and it's almost like this choreographed dance, where each delivery is totally unique. One might be a foxtrot, one might be a waltz. Like each needed its own carefully, we enable this, you do that, right? So it was a very different way of working, and it has inspired a lot more collaboration, trust. We kind of have to show our process a little bit more, and they show theirs a little bit more, and it's been great, different, great. Less great. Less great is caching. Who is having a problem with caching strategy? So in the beginning, we were caching, clearing our cache every 15 minutes, which was fine because there wasn't that much content actually being delivered or called upon. As enablement grew, so did our usage and so did our cost. So we upped our cache to 24 hours. That didn't have enough of an impact, so we upped it to 7 days. That worked great, but you might have a situation where you publish a page and you don't see it for a week. Obviously, that's not going to work for our business. So we implemented a webhook strategy that's at the page level as opposed to app level. We've instructed our regional editors to always publish from the page with references. This triggers the webhook that exists at the page level. However, not all content types are at the page level. For example, here you see the left navigation of customer service and the site-wide banner. So on this singular page, there are 3 caching strategies working in concert with one another. Not to mention, we also have our SFCC cache of 15 minutes. So it becomes a challenge when something doesn't launch. Why is it? Which caching strategy didn't trigger? Is it a webhook? Is it a this or is it a that? We are very interested in looking at Automate, though, because we want to understand and have like a report that compares, did something actually not make it? And I'm not talking about a publish not fail, not even, I'm not talking about an unfailure of a publish. It looks like it published, but it might not have. So this is something that I'm like, talk to me about this. I wanna learn a better way. So some lessons learned. It takes time to get used to this new way of working and this mindset. A flexible system requires sometimes even more flexible plans. Migration can have lots of definitions. Is it a manual migration? Is it a programmatic migration? Is it something in the middle, like what we did with our blog landing page? A nice punt for later. A good architecture design requires working with the most complex system first. So we spent a lot of time on our localization needs. And sometimes publishes don't work, and this requires a reworking of right now our caching and webhook strategy.
All right, and starting to wrap us up with some wins and efficiencies. We're very lucky that we can stand here this morning and know that we're doing things today that we were not doing 6 months ago, 12 months ago, 18 months ago. Editors are adopting very quickly with great positivity and growing confidence. And while the idea of a near clean slate back-end UI felt really daunting at first, we've been able to take advantage of kind of our evolution in building content. We're putting fields where it makes the most sense for editors. We're naming them in a way that makes the most sense for editors. And we've really been able to deliver on nice moments of delight. We also partnered with Grid Dynamics on a couple of customizations that are really benefiting our EU team. When it comes to, you've localized a content entry, we now have a way to actually propagate a change within a select field down through a localized entry. So even if you've already sort of broken your inheritance of changes, we found a way to push that down, which really gives editors a kind of a template of sorts. We're working through copying localized entries, which also gives editors a starting off place and an easy way to make quick changes and iterate on your next version. While we were very careful not to allow for really any hint of redesign in our scope, we certainly had enough work to do. The speed at which we were moving allowed us to take on some really nice UI updates. And it actually helped us to over-deliver on our commitment to really kind of what was an original lift and shift of a component from our old to the new architecture. And while at the beginning, our initiative, there were lots of new buzzwords being thrown around, API-led, composable, headless, really steeped in technology and developer advancements and benefits. But we're already seeing and understanding from a business perspective on behalf of our editors and as the enablement team, all of the benefits in moving forward in the way that we are. In terms of what's next, the focus does continue to be on e-commerce through the rest of the year. We're moving into more complex content modeling with on-site forms. And thank you to Dawn Foods for doing some information and insight sharing on their forms solution. We hope to launch that next month. And the exciting part about that is that forms will be the first element in our stack to take advantage of our design system. So very excited about how that changes our work and accelerates our work going forward. We know that while we're considering ourselves, a global content solution, our regions are still empowered to take on local vendors, help them solve for things that their customers need at the regional level, which adds some complexity as we move across our sites. We have more third-party integrations coming up in the back half to ensure business continuity. As we start to look beyond .com, and at our strategic priorities across the rest of the ASICS Digital ecosystem, we're feeling really good about our position as far as having a more flexible, more forward-looking vision, and that's standing on a more future-proof architecture. Thank you. Thank you.